What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this video, there's an economic war happening for control of an entire continent? And the winner of this battle will shape the next 50 years of global power? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I break down the biggest geopolitical stories that mainstream media won't tell you. And today's story is massive. We're talking about the battle for Africa. Specifically, who's going to control Africa's trade future, China or the United States? Now, before you click away thinking, this doesn't affect me, let me stop you right there. Africa is about to become home to 25% of the world's population by 2050. We're talking about 1.4 billion people and potentially the most economically dynamic region on Earth. So whoever wins this battle doesn't just control Africa, they control a huge piece of the global economy. The numbers I'm about to show you will blow your mind. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this might be the most important economic story that nobody's talking about. So smash that like button if you want to see more deep dives like this, and let's get into it. China's domination. All right, let's start with the current heavyweight champion, China. And when I show you these numbers, your jaw is going to drop. China-Africa trade hit $295.6 billion in 2024. That's billion with a B. To put that in perspective, that's more than the GDP of most countries. But here's the kicker. In the year 2000, China-Africa trade was just $11.67 billion. We're talking about a 25x increase in just over 2 decades. But wait, it gets better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. In a move that basically nobody saw coming, China just eliminated all tariffs on goods from 53 African countries. Let me repeat that, all tariffs gone. That's not 50 countries. That's basically every African country that recognizes China diplomatically. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so they're good at trade deals, so what? But guys, this goes so much deeper than just buying and selling stuff. China isn't just trading with Africa, they're literally rebuilding it from the ground up. Under something called the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, and yes, that's as official as it sounds, China has pledged $50.7 billion for 2025-2027 alone. We're talking about ports, railways, power plants, internet infrastructure. The whole 9 yards. And here's where it gets really strategic. China has this dual-track approach that's honestly genius from their perspective. Track 1, electrification. They're building power plants and electrical grids because, get this, 43% of Africans still don't have electricity. Track 2, extraction. They're basically securing all the raw materials they need for their economy while they're at it. But the most interesting move? China and Nigeria just renewed a $2 billion currency swap agreement. What does that mean in plain English? It means African countries can trade directly with China using Chinese yuan instead of US dollars. That might not sound like a big deal, but it's actually huge for reducing America's global financial influence. Think about it. If you don't need dollars to trade, you don't need to care as much about what America thinks about your trade policies. That's some next-level economic chess right there. America's response. Now let's talk about Team USA. And honestly, this is where things get complicated. America's main play in Africa is something called AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. It sounds impressive, right? And on paper, it kind of is. AGOA gives African countries duty-free access to US markets for over 1,800 products. But here's where it gets messy. AGOA expires in September 2025, like it just ends. And under the current administration, there are serious questions about whether it's even going to be renewed. Meanwhile, while China is eliminating tariffs, the US has actually imposed tariffs as high as 50% on some African exports. Can you see the problem here? But wait, there's more. AGOA isn't just, hey, let's trade. It comes with strings attached. Big strings. To qualify for AGOA, African countries have to establish market-based economies, rule of law, political pluralism, and remove barriers to U.S. trade and investment. Now, I'm not saying these are bad things. They're actually really important for long-term stability. But imagine you're an African leader and you need infrastructure now. China says, here's $50 billion, let's build some roads and power plants. America says, first, reform your entire political system, then we'll talk about trade deals. Which one are you going to choose? The numbers tell the whole story. While China-Africa trade is pushing $300 billion, the US-Africa trade is, well, let's just say it's not even in the same ballpark. But here's the thing, and this is important. America does offer something China can't: a governance-based pathway to sustainable development. Countries that successfully work with AGOA often see real improvements in transparency, reduced corruption, and better business environments. The question is whether African leaders want to wait for those long-term benefits when they can get immediate infrastructure from China. And honestly, if I were in their shoes, I'm not sure what I'd choose either. The real battleground. So here's where things get really interesting. Africa isn't just sitting back and letting these two superpowers fight over them. African leaders are getting sophisticated about this, and they're playing both sides. Let me give you some examples. In East Africa, countries like Kenya and Ethiopia have gone all in on Chinese infrastructure. The Chinese built a massive railway in Kenya, power plants in Ethiopia. You can literally see the development happening. But in West Africa, countries have stronger ties to the US through AGOA. And South Africa? They're trying to balance both relationships because they're smart enough to know they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. The energy sector is where this battle is most intense. Africa has incredible renewable energy potential. We're talking solar and wind that could power half the world. But right now, 90% of their energy still comes from fossil fuels. China's approach? We'll build you renewable energy infrastructure and help you extract your oil and gas. America's approach? Let's focus on clean energy transitions, but here's less money up front. Again, if you're an African leader, which sounds more appealing? But here's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about: debt. A lot of these Chinese investments come as loans, not gifts. And several African countries are already struggling with Chinese debt. Some critics call it debt trap diplomacy. Basically, loan countries money they can't repay, then take control of the infrastructure you built. The US programs typically have fewer upfront benefits but more sustainable financing. It's like the difference between a payday loan and a traditional bank loan. One gets you money fast but might hurt you long term. The other takes longer but is more sustainable. What happens next? So who's going to win this battle for Africa's trade future? Plot twist. Probably neither of them will completely win, and that might actually be the best outcome for Africa. Here's what I think happens. First, if America doesn't renew or seriously upgrade AGOA, they basically forfeit the game. African leaders are watching this closely, and if America shows it's not serious about long-term partnership, they'll go with China by default. Second, as more African countries struggle with Chinese debt, the shine might come off those infrastructure deals. That creates opportunities for other models, maybe European, maybe American, maybe something entirely new. Third, and this is the big one, Africa is building its own continental free trade area. As African countries start trading more with each other, they might care less about what both China and America want. The most likely scenario? A complex web where different African regions partner with different global powers based on what works best for them. East Africa with China, West Africa with America, everyone else mixing and matching. The bottom line is this: Africa's trade future won't be controlled by any single external power. It's going to be shaped by smart African leaders who use this great power competition to get the best deals for their own people. And that's actually pretty exciting. What do you think? Are you Team China, Team USA, or Team Africa should control its own destiny? Let me know in the comments below. And if this kind of deep dive into global economics is your thing, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because I've got more videos like this coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.